Lead balloons.
Lead balloons.
The alchemy of unpopular opinions.
Unpopular opinions.
Yeah, I feel a little spicy today, so all bets are off.
And I know that you're out to get the ladies.
We are not encouraged to think critically.
Life is hard. It's supposed to be hard.
Oh my gosh. That's hilarious. Busted.
What's up, peeps? My name is Joel Triska. What?
I'm sorry, I cut you off. I thought you were talking to me. Roll with it, buddy.
All right. This is Lead Balloons. Feels kind of like a letdown. But it is the alchemy of unpopular opinions. So, what's up, peeps? And by peeps, I mean all the people who aren't Trent. Trent, it's not about you all the time, okay? I'm here in Dallas. Where are you at, Trent?
I'm in Lakewood, and I want to let you know, Joel, that I am drinking a White Russian tonight in honor of our topic, a reference to Jeffrey Lebowski from The Big Lebowski. So I just thought it was the right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do. Lakewood, by the way, people, is not a benign town that's a suburb of basically every metropolitan area in the United States. Trent is in like the Rocky Mountains, right? Basically.
Oh yeah. Of course. That's pretty much correct, Joel. We can see the mountains, we can sense the mountains, we can get to the mountains. There's a lot of mountains involved over here. Yeah.
Great story.
Wow.
All right, so our topic today is we're going to dive back into this topic of work, which, Trent, like, we've been buddies for a while now, but I've noticed in our conversations in the past maybe year to 2 years is really, like, dialed in on this philosophy of work. And now I've witnessed for a while now your vocational wandering. You are like Aragorn from... not all who wander are lost, right? You are the Aragorn of work. So we touched on this before when we talked about Jocko Ain't My Hero. This lead balloon conversation is about challenging the hyper-achieving archetype that our culture worships, right? So in a paragraph or two, Trent, how do you think our episode critiquing Jocko's life message of discipline and hard work overlaps with today's topic?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that we talked about in that episode was the concept of like discipline, because Jocko Willink is very big into discipline. Now, when he talks about discipline, he's talking about primarily like internal discipline, the discipline you sort of apply to yourself to achieve a goal, and that can be very good, right? But in the essay that we're going to be talking about tonight, the author talks about discipline from a different angle. Discipline in the sense of externally imposed discipline. So the discipline that you experience at your workplace, the surveillance, the rote work, the supervision, the showing up at exactly this time and wearing this thing and going to the bathroom only when you're told. So that kind of discipline that you experience, it doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you feel internally empowered, but it makes you feel like you're part of a hierarchy. So the difference between internally imposed discipline from yourself and externally imposed discipline, I think is a point of contact between these two. Okay.
So, like, you referenced this essay, and we're going to talk about it. It's a famous essay. And by famous, I mean, I have never heard of it until you told me about it. But you sent it over to me, and it's an essay called The Abolition of Work by a man by the name of Bob Black, a very, just benign name. He's an essayist with a anarchist bent, right? That's kind of like where he leans.
Yes.
And he wrote this in 1985. Apparently it was kind of an essay that was birthed from some previous talks that he had been giving. So this is like already almost 40 years ago. And he critiques the state. He critiques ideologies on the left and the right. In the end, he questions our blind commitment to what we often call work ethic. So this is going to be some good shit, guys. So like, buckle up. We're about to lead balloon this business. Start us off, Trent. Give us the elevator pitch of this essay. What does this mean? Why do you love it so much?
Yeah, I do feel like this essay is my baby. I mean, I've read quite a few essays being an English lit major and having a master's in theology, but this probably is in my top 5. It's not my favorite of all time. So Bob Black in The Abolition of Work has basically written a polemic against work. So it's a very hard-nosed, sarcastic, fairly well-researched essay. And basically what he does in the essay is he describes work, he defines work, and then he despises work. And as he says in his essay, to define it is to despise it. He talks about his definition of work is compulsory production or forced labor. So he gets his terms straight, does a good job of that. But the thing also that I think I most love about the essay is he invites he not only critiques work in an unforgettable way, but he invites us to explore and imagine an alternative reality to the one that we're a part of right now. And it's a very compelling invitation, I think. It's incomplete, it's suggestive, it's tantalizing, but it's an attempt to get us to imagine what life would be like if we started thinking different thoughts about the way that we spend most of our waking hours. There you go.
All right.
Are
Great.
we at floor 10? We're probably past floor 10.
That elevator pitch definitely went past the 13th floor, which is interestingly, like I had some friends in a hotel. I mean, the hotel was condos. They lived on the 14th floor, but it was really the 13th floor because there was no 13th button. Like, it's so interesting how those superstitions still exist in architecture
it's
today.
Weird, man.
Like, who's the elevator guy who's like putting in the buttons, going like, "Throw away the 13, dude." It's just like we don't allow bananas on the boat.
That's not an insignificant story, because I would imagine there's probably a character out there whose only job was to like create floor 13 buttons, and he did it for like 7 years, and they just kept throwing him out, and he kept coming to work.
Exactly. He's like, I get a paycheck.
Suicide.
I get a paycheck.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We got dark quick. All right, let's do this. Let's talk about one of the items that Bob Black harps on. Work is slavery. As slavery. He challenges the American worship of democracy, as if we're this free society. Again, there's that sarcastic tone you can kind of hear as he's writing. This free society compared to totalitarian police states, but instead, and I'm going to give some longer quotes so that everyone can kind of get a taste of this essay, because I severely doubt everyone's going to read this. Side note, I have never had to look up more words in my life when I read this essay. Like, I had the thesaurus and dictionary.com like open another tab going like, what does that word mean? It was like, that adjective is so obscure. But here's a quote from Bob Black's essay. A worker is a part-time slave. The boss says when to show up, when to leave, and what to do in the meantime. He tells you how much work to do and how fast. He's free to carry his control to humiliating extremes, regulating, if he feels like it, the clothes you wear or how often you go to the bathroom. With a few exceptions, he can fire you for any reason or no reason. He has you spied on by snitches and supervisors. He amasses a dossier on every employee. Talking back is called insubordination. Just as if a worker is a naughty child, and it only gets you fired, it disqualifies you for unemployment compensation. So, this little quote, this pericope, if we should call it, I'm sure it kind of gets under your feathers, Trent. So right now, I just want to unleash the fire of Trenton. Ready, set, go.
Well, what I love is just how like Bob Black basically pokes fun at our American overconfidence in how free and democratic we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I start thinking about, so because we get to go vote every 2 years, like for 10 minutes and maybe spend an hour reading the little manual they send to us. Oh man, we are free and democratic, baby. When I think about democracy and freedom, I think about going to a freaking poll or sending off my mail-in ballot, and that makes me feel free. And so what he's showing here is if we claim to be in a free and democratic society, why is it that those principles that we champion don't seem to have they don't seem to apply at all to our workplace? Are we democratic at our workplace? If we're not, why not? Maybe it's, maybe we shouldn't be, but are we not democratic there? And if not, why not? Are we free at our workplace? I mean, according to his good description there, and many people would agree with this, we're not free at our workplace. We are constantly subordinated to so many of the indignities imposed upon us by employers. Now, there might be good rationales for those. That's totally fine. That's a separate discussion. But to claim that we are a free and democratic society and to say that then that freedom and democracy only really applies at election time, it's pretty laughable. And I think that he's picking up on that and just shoving that back in our, we're not like China. We're not like the Soviet Union. Why? Because people can't vote there and we get to vote. And that's huge. Vote for somebody who's already been chosen anyway. It's just completely ridiculous.
Yeah, there's no system. There's no system at play that we're powerless over behind the democratic election.
No. Yeah. I feel free when I leave every morning at 7:30 and I go through traffic and then I get to work and I wear what I'm told to wear, and maybe there's a little ping pong table at work so my boss can make me feel like I'm a little child who gets to have a little bit of fun, and I have to go have lunch from 12 to 12:30 even if I want to be gone for an hour, and then I have to go and ask him or her for vacation time, and I've got cameras on me and I've got other employees who are tattling on me, and I've got to go to these stupid meetings. That's when I feel the freest, Joel.
Oh man,
that's the moment.
That's just like pure ecstasy. Like just
I love it.
Yeah, I when you put it in that context, it is so interesting how we normalize some of these like experiences through the lens of messaging that we receive. I hear about this in the context of psychology, and I think about, we all kind of like in our society use these words like workaholism, people who are addicted to work. And I personally spent a fair amount of time, a lot of time actually, in 12-step rooms. That's a topic for another day. But where men and women wrestle with step one is admitting powerlessness and that their lives have become unmanageable. Yet I have never found a recovery program for workaholics. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I think the simple answer is most alcoholics are kind of a nuisance to society, and workaholics are extremely useful. Their utility is huge. Well, and in a society like ours where so much can be reduced to your usefulness, your economic output ability, that's kind of the answer there. I mean, you and I both love Gabor Mate. We've read his stuff. We've listened to him. Mm-hmm. I revere him, and I think he's done great work. He's a workaholic. He acknowledges it.
He does.
It has harmed his family relationships. And I imagine, and I think he probably is working on it, but I know it became a big issue in his relationship with his wife, and he's close to like 80 years old. That was just a few years ago. And she was like, you better stop doing this or I'm going to leave you. Mm-hmm. But we love his output. We don't really, we don't have to be around for the nasty family stuff. We like the output. So I have to admit that I'm part of the problem. I guess I want to live in a world potentially of workaholics because they give me good stuff, So that's my answer, Joel. I implicate myself in that,
I agree with that actually, Trent. And I guess the soft, to kind of offer a little bit of a more compassionate view. One thing that's different between like a Gabor Mate and like someone else who's talked about the workaholism, like a pastor like John Piper, who's you have these kind of narcissistic personalities that just like rule with an iron fist and speak in only declarative sentences. You the difference between both of those kind of individuals is a self-awareness around and being responsible for the self-awareness. And a Gabor Mate, to me, just feels so much more palatable and easier to listen to because there's so much more self-reflection and self-accountability that I sense from his messages versus these other kind of like narcissists who are saying the right things. Okay, so
I mean, he's trying to get us. Just to cut you off for a second, he's at least confessing. To use Christian parlance, he's confessing so that he can move forward. I mean, part of addressing workaholism is acknowledging that it's not good, no matter how beneficial it is to society. It's not good for us. It's not good for the people we're close to.
And that's just to kind of like tag onto that. All addiction, one of the pathways out of it is to acknowledge what it did for us and what it did for other people.
Yes.
You have to acknowledge, like alcoholics. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't identify as that, but I've heard it spoken many times that it's this thing that's like liquid courage. It helps me in social situations, or it helps dull some like very difficult pain from trauma. And whatever the addiction is, it serves a role until it starts creating more harm than good. And that's when you have to begin to create. It's not the alcohol isn't the problem. It's the relationship to it. Work's not the problem. It's the relationship to it. So let's move forward to this. On a more positive note, I would assert that the primary argument of Black's essay is a vision of life as play, which I loved about this essay. He uses the word ludic, which I had to look up. Ludic.
Yeah.
And it just kind of is aimless play. Frivolity, so to speak. In fact, let me just kind of talk about like ludic was one of these terms that really drew me in, playfulness in an aimless way. And he has this quote. I'll read to you. There are more full-time students than full-time workers in this country. We need children as teachers, not students. He's kind of critiquing education system as well. These children, they have a lot to contribute to the ludic revolution because they are better at playing than grown-ups are. Only play can bridge the generation gap. So I'm really curious what you take away as the ludic revolution.
Yeah, well, the first thing I think I would say, Joel, I mean, maybe you'd agree with me, but doesn't those sentences just sound good?
Yes.
They make me feel good. And, one of the things that I'm very attentive to as a lit major, as somebody who's spent his life doing a good amount of reading, is what words are able to do, not just the information that they convey, but what the actual, constellation of words can act, what kind of new reality it can create. I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, but there's an author named Adam Phillips I've referenced a million times, but he makes a point about how if we want to see some changes in our lives or in society, one of the ways there is maybe by trying out new words, seeing how they feel. And you've talked about this. For instance, you prefer to say less. You prefer to not use good and evil as much anymore. You're trying to use beautiful, ugly, true, helpful, harmful.
Yeah.
Harmful. Seeing what this does to your paradigm, the lens through which you see the world. And I think that Bob Black is doing a similar thing. And I want to actually ping pong to talk about the ludic revolution in kind of along the lines of a new vocabulary. I'm going to ping pong with another quotation, and we can respond to it. But he says in reference to the ludic revolution and like abolishing work, he says that doesn't mean we have to stop doing things. It does mean creating a new way of life based on play. In other words, a ludic revolution. By play, I mean also festivity, creativity, conviviality, commensality, and maybe even art. There is more to play than child's play, as worthy as that is. I call for a collective adventure in generalized joy and freely interdependent exuberance. I mean, it's the kind of stuff when people read, like they get excited about Chronicles of Narnia, let's say. Mm-hmm. That's something you and I, a reading experience you and I have shared. They get excited because of sort of the world of possibility that this sort of is open to them. Forget for a second how realistic and practical it might be. I mean, all entrepreneurs, all people who are all artists are always starting off with wild and crazy ideas that actually, well, they may actually not be that wild and crazy, but it feels that way. And that's where you start. And I just love the sentences here that he uses. A generalized joy and freely interdependent exuberance. He's getting people, he's kind of knocking them off of their horse and getting them to see the world from a different vantage point. It's very exciting. So I'd say a revolution, a ludic revolution by means of new or repurposed words that we've just neglected.
Yeah, I definitely feel. I mean, that sentence that or that quote I should say had so many beautiful and enticing, attractive words in it. Exuberant interdependence. I mean, that's, to me, is just relationship at its best. I think it's what we as human beings desire and crave at every moment. We desire connection. We desire that sense of feeling loved and being loved. And we're seeking a sense of community. And work tries to create it. But in this capitalistic environment, or, you pick the whatever political system, it's like putting lipstick on a pig, right? It doesn't really move the needle. You can you're just like, okay, this is not really working. It makes me think of a quote from C.S. Lewis, to go back to the Chronicles of Narnia. He has this quote where he says, "When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up." And I think that we have a story in our culture that is just, I can't remember not hearing it, not knowing it. It's in our fables, it's in our myths, it's in, whether you're reading about our founding fathers or Abraham Lincoln, or whether you're whatever it may be, it just feels like it's in the freaking soil. You can't avoid it. And that is, when we grow up, you become responsible and you do the things that you are supposed to do. And it's just like, oh, this is so deep in the matrix of my understanding of the world. To question it feels like I'm becoming a crazy person because I'm questioning reality. What do you say to people who are like trying to question? How do you get them? There's a better question. How do you get people to really question these deeply fundamental, foundational ideas that they've been spoon-fed since they were a fetus?
If you can answer that question, you're a millionaire. I don't know the answer to that. I know that people have to be at a place in their life where they're able to hear those things. So they have to, that those conditions have to be right. I think comedy, music, I think that really bold and courageous art, these are ways of getting people to, it's a full frontal assault on somebody's not always the best way, but dropping a little,
ever the best way, in my opinion.
Dropping a little seed here and there. Hey, would you consider this? Or what if this were different? It's getting people to start it's sort of that inception thing of planting an idea deep in somebody's mind and just waiting to see what'll happen. But just to say, hey, I'd ask somebody like, where do your desires come from? How do they get there? Whose pleasure is your obedience and your compliance, and why do you think that is? What might a workday look like if you were in charge, or if you had your say? I don't think people allow themselves to even ask these questions, and they get shut down immediately by media pundits a lot of times who, oh, we all know that won't work. We all know that this is the way that it is. So anybody who does that is just a hippie or a dreamer. And basically by saying hippie, like before any behavior about to describe, is basically a way of saying we tried that, didn't work. And that's what we're up against in our world.
As you're talking there, I just had something completely off script go through my mind, a connection. I was just thinking about how retirement in our system, at least in America, is kind of seen as like you do all this so that one day you can actually envision the day you want to have. Like you get to define work when you're no longer working.
Yes.
Albeit at a time when your body is not well abled, when you're dealing usually with more all the illnesses and the dysfunctions that are a product of grinding for so many decades. And it made me think of the movie The Island. Did you ever see that? It has and Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson in it, and it's directed by Michael Bay, which I'm not a great fan of because Michael Bay just likes to watch things explode. But it's a great, I mean, spoiler alert, if anyone's not seen it, it came out a while ago, so if you haven't seen it, don't get mad at me. But you have all these people, and it feels like a utopian society. And all these individuals they live in this very strict world. All their clothes are very clean. They're very well taken care of. And they get to like work out, have fun, but they can't touch each other. And then one of them breaks out because I'm sorry, let me skip back. And they all have this hope of one day there's this lottery that if they get in the lottery, they will get to leave this little enclave and go to an island where they will live out the rest of their days. And so everyone's wanting to go to this island. And everyone's just like, there's so much hope about it. And what they find out, the guy who breaks free, is that actually this was all a construct. And the people who win the lottery are people who are being brought to a hospital to have their organs taken out because they're actually all clones.
Oh, gosh.
That someone has purchased. And so that if someone needs like a organ replacement, and so what has happened, this whole world is fake. It's false.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of like the false promises of work. And you hear this so many times. It's like, I was told to put in my hours. I was told this, and then I would one day get this. And there's just massive disappointment on the other end. And so like, I'm just wondering, like, what does it look like to disrupt that delusion? It kind of feels like this essay is trying to do that.
Yeah, and like referring back to that the podcast about all around Jocko Willink. I mean, yes, so you can give individual advice, but it's important also to ask the macro question: what is the result of more and more people sort of mindlessly deciding that they want to self-deny and subordinate themselves to a work regime? Does it produce the results for the bulk of people? I mean, not everybody can be an entrepreneur, people. Not everybody is a business owner. Business owners exist without employees. Schools don't exist without teachers. It's not everybody is a ladder climber. We don't want that kind of world. We want variety. But we've essentially created this idea where everybody needs to be an entrepreneur and climb the ladder. Well, guess what? With, again, that kind of attitude, I believe, is taken advantage of by people who are looking to just come scoop up the surplus of your labor for their own benefit. Yeah. And a lot of times it just doesn't. There are tons of people who bust their butts, and maybe they do see some results. But at what cost? Does it cost them their health? Does it cost them their relationships? Does it cost them their mental health? Does it cost them other opportunities that they didn't even know they could have?
I get it. I think, just had a surge of anger come through me because I think about people who are like, well, I worked really hard. You hear these kind of entrepreneurs. I busted my butt. It's like, motherfucker, there's a black mom who's down in South Dallas, who's working 3 jobs, taking care of multiple kids and her grandkids, who's working twice as hard as you. Stop with the stories. Like, working hard isn't the reason you're at where you're at. You're at where you're at because you got a lot of skills and opportunities and privilege that she doesn't have. That's what that's about.
Yeah, exactly. That's right on, man.
Okay. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest.
Do poop it out.
So let's get real here, and as we kind of go to the denouement of this conversation, Bob Black's essay, while beautiful in its ludic vision, you see how I baked that ludic in there, it feels totally unrealistic. For the abolition of work to happen, all sorts of other things in our world need to change. Our world is not set up for this vision to just unfold. So can we agree that it's unlikely for economic ideologies like capitalism and communism, both sides, to disappear in our lifetime? Can we just kind of agree with that?
So?
Okay. So if so, help me understand why this essay, or what this essay, could mean for those of us who are still entrenched in a culture of workaholism. What are, a couple of practical steps we could take to detach, and I'm going to use a spiritual, religious word, to detach from the idolatry of work?
Yeah. Well, yes, Joel. I mean, you're right. His vision is unrealistic. He even acknowledges that. He says, something like it's incompatible with existing reality, and he says so much the worse for reality. That is something that gravity hole that sucks the vitality out of us. But yeah, I mean, there's only so much that you can do, and you'll go crazy if you're spending all your days thinking about how you can revolutionize this world. I do think that sometimes dramatic changes have happened in history, for which there weren't really precedents. So very interesting things could very well happen, or they could very well not. So, but I think the smart thing for people to do who sort of are beginning to identify this as a problem in society and a desire in their own life is, I would say that one of the things that people can start doing is to just recognize sort of, how am I sort of being played? And how can I exempt myself from that? I can't totally check out. I guess you could, but most people don't want to check out of society. It's too costly. So what are things that you can start doing? One of the things that I've started to do, people talk about, what are your long-term goals? The interview question, 5 years, where do you see yourself? What are your long-term goals? What do you want to do? One of the things that I want to do as a goal that I'm sure I've got written down in some journal is I want to work less. As soon as possible, I want to work less. And like Bob Black, it's not that I want to not do things. I want to do things that I want to do, and I want life to be more playful. So I want to be absorbed in the work that I'm doing, and I want to be absorbed in my friendships. I want to be absorbed in reading books and hiking and dancing and listening to music and talking with you about movies and books and all this kind of stuff. I want to be absorbed in all those things, and I want to have more time for the things that I really value. And part of that also means, so if you're going to work less, it might mean that you have to look at sort of how you may be falling into the consumerist trap. What are the things that the powerful advertising industry has told you that you need to have, that when you look at it, you're like, that thing actually, it doesn't actually make me happy. Those things are, I thought they did, but they don't. These other things I know make me happy, or maybe I don't know what makes me happy. Maybe I'll set out and try to find out. But many of us have foreclosed on discovering what it is that we might really want. We've decided I need this thing, I need that thing, I need all these things. Well, if you're going to need all those things, you're going to be wedded to your job. I would just say to people, hey, find the nearest possible opportunity to say fuck you to your boss and exempt yourself from this thing. Whether it's finding a place where you can work less, or finding a way to work for yourself if that's possible. If you have to continue being an employee, how can you make changes at your workplace? I mean, it's not easy, Joel. Obviously there's a lot of hiccups and stuff, but I would challenge people to evaluate how they've fallen into the consumerist trap, begin to ask themselves, where do my desires come from, and are they really reflective of me?
Yeah.
And who knows what'll happen when more and more people start. I hope that even this conversation, maybe some people listen to it, and it'll get people to at least say, hey, there's other people out there. I mean, when I read Bob Black's essay, I just got so excited because I'm like, oh, there's another person who's thinking, not that I'd thought about it in quite that way, but we were in that same stream. There's somebody else who's thinking these things, who sees how fucking stupid it is, how idiotic a world it is that we live in sometimes. And we can at least start dreaming of other things, even while we're living our stupid lives in this bullshit machine. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that, the opt-out kind of thing, because I think we have to admit that there is a growing awareness that there is this common stream that we call culture, and it is created and driven and maintained by people who benefit from it. And I've been in, for example, I've been a pastor for a long time, and I've seen how that stream of religion exploits people. And even while I was in that stream, I did my damnedest to not be one of those people, to not play off emotionalism, to not try and make people feel guilty and live a life, according to these stupid stories that are really not even tied to the scripture I studied, but are tied to interpretations born out of the medieval time period. But because most people don't read history, they don't know, including the pastors who are teaching this nonsense. And so I remember in that moment being in the stream, but trying to break free, opting out of the stories about hell and damnation, opting out of the stories of purity and perfection, opting out of these stories that I knew caused harm and damage. So
yes,
I currently work at a job, and I have benefits and HR, and it's a big bureaucratic organization. But for me, this kind of opting out happens when I stop taking so seriously the pressure that I know is being put on me to just make me work harder. My job's not at risk. I'm doing a good job. My reviews are all above average. Why should I keep pushing myself? To what end? How is that benefiting me, other than making an organization that's not going to pay me more for what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Why would I do that? And so what I'm opting out of is not the organization's message. I'm opting out of my internal messaging of perfectionism and trying to prove, basically on some deep psychological level, I'm not allowing work to be this way for me to prove that I'm worthy. And I think a lot of people are trapped in that. Work is their way of trying to prove to themselves and probably their dads that they're worthy.
Well said.
So I'm going to give you the final say here, Trent. What would you say in terms of this kind of world of work? You have again, you have this wandering vocational life. I imagine this gigantic map, and the lines just you've moved around and such passion, you've always made moves with such passion and conviction. You don't do it without thought. So the wandering is obviously very trying to pay attention, but still you get to work for yourself now. You found a space where you feel comfortable and you're able to kind of pursue things you care about. What would you say to the person who's they need the benefits, right? They need to work in an organization where there's bureaucracy because that stability is helpful for their situation. Um, put yourself in their shoes. How would you find play?
That is a very, very good question. I think that we can't die on every hill. We can't. There's only so many battles that we can fight or want to fight. So you have to have a fairly clear understanding of what is it you're trying to do in life. And hey, if you're at a workplace, is there any way that you can kick up dust that would make you feel good? I mean, I'm tapping into the sense that everybody out there, there's some bit of dog in everybody that says, nope, ain't gonna do it, don't want to do it. So find something that you can be controversial about. Maybe you're not going to die for it. Maybe you not lose your job, but you might feel better by an occasional middle finger to somebody who's making your life hell or whatever it is. So that's just a challenge, is a little bit of courage and conviction for some people who haven't exercised those muscles and would benefit from doing it. And then in the time that you're not at work, make it your priority to again instigate the ludic revolution. So that, I mean, you're probably thinking of people who are in a position where they're maybe married and have multiple kids, and maybe the kids are at that age where there's a lot of, it's very labor intensive and all these kinds of things. So I don't know if I have much to say there because I haven't experienced that, but hopefully those people would be in a position where they can evaluate their non-work lives, figure out if there's any tweaks they can make, and recognize that this sense even that they need to take their lives so seriously and take their career ambitions so seriously maybe could be called into question, even as they play that game that we all in a sense kind of have to play. We're all wired differently, and not everybody can be a martyr and all that. I'm not wired that way. So yeah, my revolution is, it's kind of the Lebowski-esque revolution, is sort of like, I'll revolt. I'll revolt just by I'll revolt by just not being part of that system, and find somebody else to do it, to be part of your crazy game. I'm not gonna do it.
Can you give us a sense of kind of like what your work day looks like?
Well, I've begun to really savor my mornings. So this is something. This is here. I will tell you this. This is a little thing, but not an unimportant thing. So with my work, I could start at like 8 a.m. I know some of my other TaskRabbit buddies, they're handymen, start working at like 8 o'clock or earlier. I don't want to deal with rush hour if I can avoid it. So I don't start until usually 9:30, unless it's on the weekends, and I'll start at 8:30 or 9. So start at 9:30. I get a nice time with coffee, read, think, these kinds of things, have breakfast. And one of the things I do too, if I know that my typical commute using the highway is, let's say, going to be like 20 minutes, I might take the side streets, and it might take me 35, 40 minutes, just because it's one of those things. It's like, no, I'm not going to treat myself like an implement. So I don't have to get there as quickly as possible, risking life and limb. I want to go on a drive where I might experience a little bit of repose and a little bit of beauty. So that's kind of that thing. So yeah, I mean, my work days are all kind of different. I might have one job that's a really long job and it takes me most of the day, or I might have 2 or 3 different tasks scattered throughout the day where I have these kind of hour breaks, go grab a bite to eat, coffee, these kinds of things. And then I kind of set my own schedule. I usually try to take 1 full day off per week, but I am not working. If somebody said, Trent, do you work hard? I'd say, I don't really think I mean, when I'm at a job, I apply myself and I give 100%. And I think I do really good work, but I'm deliberately not trying to work hard, so that when somebody asks me at a party, I can say, they're like, hey, well, how you doing? I won't say I'm working hard and I'm busy. I could say, today was a pretty good day. Not too crazy. Had a job that I enjoyed doing, felt good about it. And I'm deliberately choosing to sacrifice some of the things that I could have by working crazy hours in terms of accumulations, possessions, and experiences and stuff, because I want other kinds of experiences, because I want to enjoy my days more than my months or years. So
I love that. Yeah, I have 2 daughters, a fiance, house, and I am constantly trying to not allow the word busy to be authentically true. Like, and I am busy a lot. My youngest daughter's got a job, and they're ballet and volleyball, and there's I mean, my fiance right now is recovering from a surgery, so she can't drive. So I'm like taxiing everywhere, but sometimes that happens. But the core of my life will not be busy. Like, that's a story that I feel like our culture wants me to see as a badge of honor, and I see it as a lemming running off the cliff, with the rest of society. Yeah. All right, man. Lead balloons.
What's it to
Your
you?
opinions are definitely not popular.
That's right. Yeah, I know. Oh boy.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us for this conversation around the abolition of work. I think you can just Google that and find The Abolition of Work by Bob Black. It's probably on some anarchist site. Any final words, Trent?
No, this has been great. Really enjoyed it, and glad we had a chance to talk about this, my favorite essay.
All right. Peace, everyone.